Hey you, and welcome. My name is Mike, and in this old video, what we are doing today, we're going to Greece. Yeah, finally, says the 0.1% of people from Greece who, watch me. You got your islands, sun, a lot of blue, sky, sea flag, and you've got a lot of history. I mean, I suppose kind of everywhere, has a lot of history. They just decided to jot it down. And this story will add to that history, though maybe not, in the way that they would want. Outside of Athens lies the suburb of Glykanera. And by the way, I really must say, I'm gonna just butcher some Greek names, so look forward to that. But I'm not the only butcher. So let's give this story a go. Athens is where we are chilling today, named after the goddess Athena, the birthplace of democracy. For some, not all. It's got all the hits, all the good ones in its history, and I will go through them now one by one. Phew, alright, that about covers that. People have been chilling in that city for over 5,000 years, if you can believe that. And they sure as skata, that's shit in Greek, left their mark, as much as the gods have. And this story we have here, it plays out very much like one of those good old Greek tragedies I keep hearing so much about. Not really. But this one actually takes place in Greece, so I guess that's bonus points. Glykanera is a suburb of Athens, located to the northeast. Not a whole lot to say about it, other than it was home to a house that was home to Charalambos, Babis Anagnostopoulos, and Caroline Crouch. Guess which one was Greek and which one was British? It was from the home that they shared together with their 11-month-old baby daughter Lydia that Babis, as he went by, dialed 100. That's the Greek 911.
Γιατί δεν μου λίγο πιο ήρεμα. Πού είστε?
He dialed it with his nose. That was on the 11th of May, 2021. There had been a home invasion. Burglars, they broke in, they tortured Babis and Caroline for their money, for their valuables. And, well, when the police arrived at the house that early morning, they would find Caroline dead. She had been murdered. What happened, it was believed, was that in the early morning hours of the 11th of May, at about 4 AM, 3 men, some armed with handguns, broke into the house in that affluent suburb, via the cellar window. A fourth stood outside to keep sketch. Caroline, who was 19 years old, 2 months shy of 20, was sleeping in the attic with her baby. Babis, 33, was sleeping downstairs. He was tied to a chair. Caroline was tortured, then strangled. The family dog was also killed. Roxy had been hung from the banister on the stairs. Thankfully, the baby was unharmed. They made off with about 10-ish grand euros and about 20 grand worth of jewellery. And eventually, Babis, he managed to kind of worm his way out. He called the police at 6 AM. They arrived, they untied Babis, and then they found Caroline upstairs, face down on her bed, with her 11-month-old daughter crying beside her. So, pretty dark, pretty disturbing, and not at all something that occurs often in Greek society. Sure as shit, hope not. Babis and Caroline had been living together in that 3-story house in Glykanera for about 2 years at this point. Babis, to pay the bills, he was a commercial helicopter pilot, flying around the islands that dot the shit out of the Aegean Sea. Caroline, she was a college student, studying at the University of Piraeus, studying stats, baby. That's statistics. Caroline was the daughter of a British father, Filipino mother, and born in 2001 in Liverpool, UK. She ran into Babis, they first met on the island of Alonissus, That's where she had moved as a child. The whole gang had moved there. They met when Caroline, she was still in school. She was 16, and Babis was 29. So, bit weird. He would even fly over her school in his helicopter to impress her. Jesus Christ, dude. They married in Portugal while on holiday in 2019, before moving to Glycanera, adopting little Roxy the dog, 4 cats, and a baby. And their life seemed absolutely fantastic, you know, from the outside, you know, lovely house, lovely wife, lovely life. Caroline, she was mad into kickboxing, Babis, a fiend for the L bikes, and things were great. And neighbors, they would say they were a lovely, you know, lovely young couple. They had it all, and they weren't going to give it back. Until May 2021.
Δεν περιγράφεται, παιδιά, σε κανέναν, να μην τύχει. Δεν περιγράφεται, παιδιά.
Ήτανε τόσο επιαλυτικές συζητές. Τι ζητάτε τώρα, τι ζητάτε.
Να μην γίνει σε κανέναν άλλον ποτέ ξανά, τίποτα άλλο. Τα παιδιά ξέρουν τη δουλειά τους, θα τους πιάσουν και αυτό που πέρασα εγώ και η οικογένειά μου και η οικογένεια της γυναίκας μου να μην το περάσει ξανά κανείς ποτέ. Τους παρακαλέσαμε, τους είπαμε ότι έχουμε πού θα βρουν τα χρήματα.
The robbers had made off with so much in cash. The reason Babis and Caroline had that much cash was they were in the process of buying some land outside of the city because they wanted to build their dream house, baby. And I think a lot of Greeks don't keep their money in banks because, I don't know if you heard, but about over a decade ago they had a spot of trouble there. They had a fear that you might not be able to get it when you need to. When they broke in, Babis cooperated. The cash was in a Monopoly box. Great or shit place to hide your kavashta, you decide. Caroline, she didn't try to cooperate though. She tried to fight them off, and that's, well, why things ended the way they did. These bad bastards didn't take to kind of that. It's kind of odd though that, you know, she was 19 years old, just mother to an 11-month-old baby. Fighting off these 4 guys who had guns kind of, you know, would go against what you would think her motherly instincts would be. You know, give them the shit and let them get out of here. Nobody needs to get hurt. That was weird. Babis said, though, that these dickheads, when they broke in, they tied him up, they blindfolded him, but he could hear them talking. He couldn't see them, but he could hear them. And he said they spoke with accents. Accents, you say? They spoke in broken Greek. So you can see where this is going. And so, the hunt was on. It was less than a week later that an arrest was made, right on the border between Greece and Bulgaria, in a place called Evros, almost 900 kilometers away by car. A 43-year-old Georgian, not the state, not the font, the country, he was arrested over the murder of Caroline Crouch. Now he was charged with carrying out another burglary in a house about 20 minutes from Caroline's, where he, along with 4 others, broke into the house of an elderly couple and robbed them. Very much like Caroline's, right? They broke in, they tied up the elderly couple, the old ones who lived there, and forced them to hand over all their shit. So, like, well, you know, no shit. But he wasn't a killer, he wasn't terribly violent. What happened to that other couple? So to go from that to murder, well, that's what they say, but you know what? It only takes one. And at the same time, police announced they were looking for a recently released Albanian man in connection with what happened to Caroline. Then, a few days later, footage was released. Footage of a suspicious car and motorbike driving away from the scene. This was around the time Babis said they would have fled the home after killing Caroline and the dog. And a neighbour said that that bike had been in the area days before, circling the block, scoping out the place, covert-like. The local gangs, especially, you know, foreign local gangs, Albanian, Georgian, they were thoroughly examined by the police. They were cracking skulls. This case was huge. It was so high profile. The murder of Caroline Crouch had gripped Greece by the balls.
Τη σύλληψη των δραστών. Να σας πω ότι έγιναν οι σχετικές...
But no progress was being made.
Έχει όσα περισσότερα μπορούσαμε να μας έρθουν και κάθε μέρα αυτή τη στιγμή είναι 10, 15, 20 άνθρωποι στο δρόμο και ψάχνουν. Αυτό ξέρω, είναι με συνέχεια σε επικοινωνία μαζί μου όσο έχω μπορέσει να τους βοηθήσω. Αν υπάρχει κάποιος που μπορεί να τους βρει, θα τους βρουν τα παιδιά αυτά.
Ήταν τόσο σκληροί. Δηλαδή δεν καταλάβαιναν από τα παρακάλια σας, από αυτά που τους λέγατε.
Τις οικεσίες σας όλα αυτά τα πράγματα. Μας έδεσαν και από εκείνο το σημείο και μετά τους είχαμε πει ήδη που είναι τα χρήματα. Δεν ξέρω κάτι άλλο.
Εσύ κατάφερες και πήρες τηλέφωνο.
Όταν συνειδητοποιήσεις ότι η γυναίκα σου δεν βρίσκεται στη ζωή.
Όταν μέλησαν οι αστυνομοί. Όταν ήρθαν οι αστυνόμοι μέσα και μέλησαν και έβγαλαν από το κεφάλι μου τα δεσμά.
Και η κορούλα?
Η κορούλα μου ευτυχώς δεν έχει χτυπήσει, πήγε στο νοσοκομείο προληπτικά και ευτυχώς είναι καλά.
Days went by, and after multiple interviews, the police were unable to link the Georgian man to the murder. And although the home of Babis and Caroline had CCTV, it wasn't on the night of. As for forensics on Caroline's body, nada. In fact, forensics in the entire house, well, these intruders were magicians. Under her fingernails, it was conclusive, and there were no real marks on her body to speak of. Babis would post this on Instagram, a loving memory to his dear departed. It seems like the life they had together, one of vacations, luxuries and love, had been destroyed by some other. But the pictures Babis and Caroline, posted on social media, they weren't the real story. Of course not. It's the usual thing, what you post on social media, you act like that's not reality. That's not the real life they were living. People, of course, they only post what they want you to see, They don't post pictures of the boring and shit times, which we all have, without exception. And without exception was Caroline Crouch. Babis and Caroline had been in marriage counselling together, and the fact that they weren't sleeping together can be a clue. Things weren't great, and she kept a diary. She wrote parts of her diary in code, so I guess Babis couldn't, read it. But we can. 31st of December 2019. I argued with Babis again, this time a lot. I hit him, I cursed him, and he broke the door. The only thing I wanted was for him to ask if I was well when I woke up. I'm thinking about leaving, going to my sister. I don't know if I can continue with Babis. I love him so much that I can't leave him, even if this relationship is harming me. From her diary, it seems she had wanted to leave for a long time. The only thing stopping her was that she didn't want her daughter to grow up without her parents being together. Some of the codes she would use, it's been reported, so she would use the letter M a lot, which police thought meant malakas, which basically means wanker. Then DG Gamma, dangerous fucking guy. XX Xylo, as in beating. PP, Paleopustis, dirty old F word, the one with the G's in it. It seems they argued quite a lot, and she had to be careful about what she said, hence the diary where she could, And let's go back to something earlier, the CCTV inside their house. This was one of the last shots, Babis with their daughter. This was taken around 1 AM. And then, hours before the intruders broke in, the SD card had been removed from the camera. Some timing. It was over a month after the murder, while Babis and Caroline's family were at a memorial for young Caroline. Here he is hugging her mother. While they were at that memorial service for her on Alanissus, police arrived and said, Babis, you gotta come in. Babis, he was a lot like another Greek, an ancient Greek, Herodotus. A teller of stories, Babis, he kind of had his own The Histories. And also a father of lies. His story just didn't quite add up, didn't make much sense. In fact, nothing he said did, and the police had found proof of it. Babis and Caroline had gotten into an argument over custody. She had been texting a friend saying she was leaving the early morning of the 11th of May 2021, and then he killed her. Babis was arrested and charged with his wife's murder.
This is Babis Anagnostopoulos, comforting his mother-in-law this week. Her memorial service was held on Thursday. And that is when Anagnostopoulos was detained by police and told that they had fresh evidence against him.
He asked what's going on, and his reaction is kind of strange and awkward. He told them that the memorial isn't over and asked the officers to let him attend the memorial until the end. They refused to let him and told him for his own good to hide his cell phone and not call anyone, and that they have to leave immediately.
Caroline's murder in May shocked Greece.
The examination of some evidence, and especially the digital evidence that we'd confiscated from the site, gave us some clues, especially the evidence that showed movement of objects, in particular the husband's phone, during the same time he had testified that he was tied up.
For weeks, Greece has been shocked by the spectre of a violent, murderous gang. If the police are right, then this horrendous crime instead comes down to the fury of just one man.
Caroline had been wearing a smart watch, which, tracks your pulse and all that kind of shit. And it showed that at 4 a.m, she had been sleeping soundly. Her pulse went from sleeping to spiking in seconds, and 11 minutes later, it flatlined. This was an hour before he said they broke in. And Babis also had on his phone, a step tracker, step counter, and it showed that while he said he was tied to a chair, the phone step counter showed he'd been walking around his house quite a bit that entire night. He staged the scene, killed his own dog, and placed his child next to her dead mother to make the scene more, grisly. And then 2 hours later, he called the police. During an 8-hour interrogation, he broke down and confessed. He said it got physical. She pushed and punched, and his judgment became, quote, blurred. And so he strangled her. He said she refused to apologize to him after an argument over their daughter. Presumably custody issues, as she wanted to leave, and, well, he suffocated her. He said he smothered Caroline to death by pressing her face against a pillow for 5 minutes, and he could hear her scream as he did so. He then said he concocted the whole armed robbery scenario as he didn't want Lydia to lose both her parents. Almost 6 weeks after Caroline's death, he was in cuffs. His trial began a year later. He argued it wasn't premeditated, didn't plan out jack shit. Caroline, fisticuffs, and he just snapped and strangled her, and then didn't know what to do, so he killed his dog. Motherfucker. Malakis, am I right? After all, she was a kickboxer and could knock 7 shades of shite out of him, he said. He was aiming for the lesser charge of manslaughter, not murder, a crime of passion. But the prosecution, they disputed that, because Caroline, she was asleep when he attacked, and they could tell via her, boom boom. So, well, yeah. He was also charged with murdering their dog, Roxy. Fucking hanging it from the stairs.
Τέρας, Τίνος, θα σ' απίσει φυλακή ρε καριόλι. Τίνος, θα σ' απίσει φυλακή, αλήτη.
He would take the stand for 10 hours, saying he lost control, but it wasn't enough to convince the judge and the jury. He was found guilty and received a life sentence for premeditated murder. In Greece, that's no parole for 20 years. Also a jail term of 11 years and 6 months for the brutal murder of Roxy, and a fine of 21,000 euros.
Έχετε να δηλώσετε κάτι.
And so ends probably the most high-profile case in recent Greek criminal history. Tragically, once again, we see a case, just divorce. Just fucking divorce. He was an okay liar. People from the start did doubt his story. Killers murdering the wife and the dog and leaving the husband isn't the usual. And her fighting back with a baby was also not terribly usual. This was just not something that happened in Greece. And kind of how he acted. Seems kind of lame to me. He should have watched some more of those Greek tragedies, you know, get some tips on acting, you know, instead of, well, maybe creating one. Thank you so much for watching. I really appreciate you taking the time watching me, watching this guy, his little Hawaiian shirt. Here, go on. See you always real soon in the next video. But until then, you know, just please look after yourselves and each other. Thanks. I love you. Bye.